Well, hey everyone, I hope you're well. I'm continuing on in the study of Proverbs, and we're actually in Proverbs chapter 23 today, and we're going to look at probably half the chapter. I believe there's 35 verses in Proverbs chapter 23, and we're just plugging away, going along, and I just hope these bring encouragement to you as we just simply look at verse by verse as we do the Bible study method, just looking at what the Proverbs have to say to God's people. So let's just start right in chapter 23 of Proverbs, verse 1, which says, "When you sit down to eat with a ruler, consider carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are a man given to appetite." Wow. "Do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food." This sounds so incredibly extreme. It sounds kind of over the top. But this is truth. If we really read into what was said, if we observe and then interpret verse 1 to 3, it sounds pretty telling, which, when you eat with a ruler, consider what is before you. And I love that. That's wisdom, considering what is before you. If you know you're tempted with a certain thing, or to do a certain, or go a certain way that's apart from the Lord, if you know what your weaknesses are, be aware of who you surround yourself with. I think that's such an important lesson for believers. So many believers who have backslidden, who have gone the opposite direction of the Lord, have done so because they've surrounded themselves, or they've let others surround them who are ungodly. And we have to be careful who we spend our time with. And I'm not saying they're an unbeliever, get them away from me. I'm not saying that, right? We want to be salt and light. We want to be good witnesses wherever we are, but we have to consider who is before us, who is around us, because they're going to influence us. Just like here, the whole point here is the extreme length we should go to make sure we stick with the Lord and with what is good and right and just, rather than what is ungodly. And that's why verse 2 is so extreme, right? Verse 2, remember, it says, "And put a knife to your throat if you are a man given to appetite." In other words, when it comes to sin, go to the extreme. Go to the extreme. Jesus said the same type of thing when he said, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Now, he wasn't talking about physical, dismemberment. He was talking about the extreme length we need to go when it comes to sin, when it comes to temptation. Cut those things off. Go to the extreme. "Do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food." So be aware and beware of who tries to lure you in. God will give you wisdom. Verse 4, "Do not overwork to be rich. Because of your own understanding, cease. Will you set your eyes on that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away like an eagle toward heaven." In other words, the psalmist is saying in verse 4 to verse 5, listen, don't make your main goal making money. It's not just about accumulating stuff for yourself, right? That's not the main goal of life. I love that. Don't overwork to be rich, because then you're going to get rich and get all this money or this stuff, and then you could put so much importance on this stuff that you're going to forget to make much of God. You're going to forget to magnify him. Instead, you're magnifying the money. You can't serve God and mammon, the Bible says, right? You have to choose one or the other. Verse 6, do not eat the bread of a miser, nor desire his delicacies. For as he thinks in his heart, so he is. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. The morsel you have eaten, you will vomit up and waste your pleasant words. So don't be lured in by those who say one thing but aren't really acting in a godly way. Don't get lured in. Some people say they're with you. Some people say, I'm going to be with you on this 100%, and they're using you. We have to be careful about who's around us and about what we agree to, right? We want to have integrity. We want to do what we say and say what we do. But when it comes to those who are trying to lure us away, we have to beware and have our eyes open. Like, Lord, is this good for my soul? Is it good for me to go here? Is it good for me to associate with these people over here who have an agenda to try to take me down, try to take away my faith. Be careful. Verse 9, do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of your words. Sometimes our words are wasted as we try to convince others of the truth. And you know that. Like maybe you've been talking to someone and they're just kind of like, they just reject, right? They just don't even care what you say. They just have their own thing they want to say, or you know they're just not listening and they don't care, and they're just, it's kind of like after a certain point, God gives you wisdom to be like, okay, that's it. You've done what you can do. You relayed the truth. You relayed the reality of the gospel. Now leave it in their hands and walk away guilt-free. You've done what I've called you to do. The Great Commission. Verse 10, do not remove the ancient landmark, nor enter the fields of the fatherless. For their Redeemer is mighty. He will plead their cause against you. Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. I love that. Just apply your heart to instruction. That's an active word. Applying means movement. It means to do something. It doesn't mean just to sit back and hopefully wisdom will come to you. But you actually have to chase after it. You have to seek after it, right? It takes a concerted effort. Verse 13, do not withhold correction from your child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. Now, some would read that and go, wow, God, the Bible is harsh. But again, this is the same kind of picture as we saw in the beginning of chapter 23 of Proverbs. When it comes to discipline, we need to make sure our kids understand what is good and what is evil. Because if they don't, they're going to be lured away by what is evil. And so often in the world, what is evil, the world calls good. That's why we're not of this world at all. But we need to teach our children what is good and what is godly and what is right. We have to, because their life depends on it. Verse 15. My son, if your heart is wise, my heart will rejoice. Indeed, I myself. Yes, my inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak right things. I love that. And so as a dad to a child, the dad's like, listen, when you do the wise thing, I'm going to rejoice. I'm going to be so happy. Don't you love when your family members or when your friends or when your children or when your spouse does the right and the godly thing? That is such a blessing, so uplifting, and we should encourage that, because we're in this fight of faith together. And so when those who love the Lord speak right things and stand up for what is right, rejoice with them. Pray for their continued strength and boldness and courage. And hopefully they'll pray for you as we navigate through this life following the Lord. Guys, that's Proverbs chapter 23, verse 1 to verse 16. And we're going to look at the rest of Proverbs 23 next time. God bless you guys.